There is something special about pausing and celebrating our people, especially those who have placed country above personal interests and worked towards leaving this island better than how they found it. I'm Joshua Hinkson, welcoming you to this National Heroes Day edition of Info Insight as we celebrate three legal luminaries of Barbados: Sir Henry Ford, Sir Richard Cheltenham, and retired Chief Justice of Barbados Sir David Simmons, who incidentally shares the same birthday as his mentor, national hero, the Right Excellent Sir Grantley Adams. Happy birthday, Sir David. Their profound influence on nation building and the legal community, not only in Barbados but further afield, is testament of their commitment to their chosen vocations in life and their desire to influence positively. Such a commitment underscores the pivotal role that individuals can play in shaping a profession and promoting a more just society. By celebrating their achievements, we not only pay tribute and honor the pivotal role that they play in nation building, but we also inspire future generations of leaders. The Caribbean Court of Justice Academy for Law recently honored 48 exceptional Caribbean lawyers as legendary Caribbean legal practitioners in the third installment of the Academy's Eminent Caribbean Jurist series. Among the honorees are 6 Barbadian jurists chosen by the Regional Selection and Advisory Committee: the late Sir Grantley Adams, the late Sir Harold Bernard St. John, the late Sir Jack Deere, Sir Henry Ford, Sir Richard Cheltenham, and Sir David Simmons. The surviving legendary legal luminaries of Barbados were acknowledged for their service to country during a ceremony here at the Supreme Court Complex on April 4th, 2024. Judge of the Caribbean Court of Justice and Chairman of the CCJ Academy, the Honorable Justice Winston Anderson, regarded the awardees as giants of the legal profession representing historical, transitional, and contemporary eras of law and development in the region.
I should say that these, of course, are representative of a larger group of people in Barbados who have made a tremendous contribution to the legal profession. So that these are not by any means exhaustive of those Barbadians who we could have recognized. And we started from the beginning, because we went back, and the first honoree was, of course, Sir Grantley Adams, who was born in 1898, and he was with us for some 73 years. And of course, his contributions extended far beyond the law. He was a statesman. He was a Premier of Barbados, first Prime Minister of the West Indian Federation.
Invest with incomparable dignity a moment of time without parallel in the long history of British Caribbean community. Today's ceremony is, in the truest sense, both a climax and a starting point. It is the climax of the hopes and aspirations of many generations of men and women in all our communities.
And those who were his essayists, who include Sir Richard and Miss C. Charan, described him as charming and approachable and passionate. I wasn't fortunate enough to know him, but I believe their words. He was, of course, one of the founding fathers of this nation. And then we had Sir John Stanley Jack Deere. He came to us in 1925, and he was with us for some 72 years. And I know that he's particularly close to many persons in this audience, especially perhaps Judge Cicely Chase, who wrote his profile for the book that will be presented later on. He was a formidable advocate, and his law practice blended well with his rich passion for community service.
Sir Jack Deere QC, who was hailed as one of Barbados's brilliant legal minds, was born in St. Lucia in 1925. He came from a family of legal minds. His uncle, Justice Dare, served as a Court of Appeal judge. Sir Jack followed in these footsteps and was called to the bar at Middle Temple in 1947. He was later appointed as a Queen's Counsel in 1963. One of his great legal achievements was when he became the first West Indian to win a case against the Privy Council. He was also president of the local bar association. This legal mind was also actively involved in politics. He ran for a seat in St. John as a member of the Barbados National Party. He served as a member of the Senate from 1964 to 1966. Sir Jack was also a member of the Independence Talks delegation in 1965. Service was another duty which Sir Jack performed willingly. In 1954, he was a founding father of the Barbados Family Planning. His strong voice to the struggle for family planning as a fundamental right for men and women continued when he became an executive member of the International Planned Parenthood Federation from 1977 to 79. He later attained the position of chairman of the Central Executive of the IPPF. Sir Jack spanned 2 administrations as chairman of the Barbados Tourism Board from 1981 to 1986. During this time, he received Barbados's second highest honor as Companion of Honor of Barbados. It was also during this period in 1982 that Sir Jack was at the center of public debate over whether or not to privatize local beaches. It even sparked a calypso in his name. But last year, in an interview with CBC, Sir Jack blamed political posturing.
I suggested that steps be taken to discipline the people who use the beaches as vendors, because I did not believe that the beaches of Barbados were appropriate places for public markets. There are people in Barbados in politics who like to posture that they're always in favor of the poor man, and of course particularly the poor black man. I tell you, posturing is the only way to describe it.
Jack there was a big man in every sense of the word. He towered in his generation over many of his contemporaries at the bar. He was an outstanding legal luminary. He was the first Barbadian to appear successfully before the Privy Council in England. He ran chambers that became the talk not only of Barbados but of the Caribbean as a whole, and set a standard for erudition, for legal learning, for integrity, and for everything that is good in the profession.
And one of the things that you will see when you read the profile on Sir Jack is that he was a mentor to many people, very caring and very compassionate. And of course, he went beyond the bounds of the legal profession, so that his name became associated with folklore, immortalized by some of our calypsonians. And then, who can forget Sir Harold Bree St. John, who again came to us in 1931 and stayed with us for 72 years.
Sir Harold, your style has always intrigued people. It has been said that your honesty and your candor have been the biggest obstacles in your political career, which leads us to infer that there is no place for integrity in politics, sir.
But I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I believe that certainly the public sum up people fairly early in their political careers, and I was summed up as a person who spoke honestly, and the public expected of me. I always got the impression that I could not get away with trying to put varnish on things and things of that nature. So I just continued in that vein because that is my nature, and I don't think that it is a big disadvantage. I have won a number of victories, I have lost some, but in the end, from the night that you lose, people will call you up and say, go back again. I think the people are the losers, not you. That is what motivated me all along, and I don't say therefore that it is necessary to change your character. If you have a character, such as I have, in relation to how I deal and how I approach matters, I just couldn't change.
How would you describe your style?
Well, I think I was matter of fact. I think that I analyzed very carefully what decisions I had to take, what I had to say. So I would probably say that I was thorough, methodical, and the object of the exercise being to do what I think was right. All of those things.
Yes.
What is your vision for the development of politics in Barbados and, by extension, Barbadian society within the next coming decade, century?
Well, I certainly think that democracy is going to survive. I think that we have fairly well mastered the system of the Westminster system. There are some faults with it, and I believe that there will always be oppositions. There will always be respect for human rights, respect for human beings in Barbados. I believe that the role of the government will continue, not necessarily in the same way that it did in the past, because I think more accountability will definitely, mechanisms will have to be with that. But there will be some other reforms. There will have to be the reforms of the public service, because politicians themselves are finding themselves in a position in which they're being held responsible and accountable, and yet still there are other institutions that deal with essential matters of discipline and things of that kind. Now, I think that we have the Caribbean as a whole has a reasonably good future.
Sir Harold was from a pedigreed upbringing, we are told by his essayists. But paradoxically, he was blunt, matter of fact. He was obviously a brilliant advocate. And his illustrious life in the cases is documented in his biography in the book, to which we will make reference later on. He was another person who devoted his life to service beyond the legal profession, and who, of course, served his nation in other ways. And then fourthly, we come to Sir Henry Ford. Sir Henry Ford came to us in 1933, and very happily is still with us. I think that deserves a round of applause. His biographers, Sir David Simmons and Justice Andrew Burgess, describe him as a Rolls Royce of an advocate.
If there is a government in the Caribbean today that is dedicated to regionalism, it's the government of Barbados, the new government of Barbados. Since we have come into power, each one of the ministers with some responsibility for outside matters have gone out of our way to talk to our Caribbean partners about all aspects of Caribbean affairs. Our new thrust in foreign policy, we have talked on a confidential basis to all foreign ministers, and in some cases heads of state, about this before they were even released to the public or discussed in public. And we feel that consultation is necessary. I have various new initiatives now in the Caribbean that we are trying to develop. They haven't reached the stage that we could talk about them in detail in public just yet. And obviously they're at a stage that we need some secrecy about some of the relations, discussions going on. But I'm very hopeful about CARICOM. I believe very strongly, first I'm a Barbadian, believe me. And I think every member of the government feels strongly about their patriotism. And I'm a strong Caribbean man, particularly the English-speaking Caribbean. We want to see the Caribbean develop, that we are speaking with a strong voice, and I think that's where Barbados is looking.
It can be anticipated that just as on the international plane, legal controversy has hinged on differences between competing ideologies, legal controversy at the regional level may eventually turn on competing ideologies, especially at a time like this when ideological passions and commitments are waxing strong on all sides. Ideological considerations may in due course come to outweigh what objective regional self-interest demands, namely the invention of legal machinery to resolve regional disputes, including disputes arising within the ambit of the Caribbean community, CARICOM. But we as lawyers should really ask ourselves that need the emergence of an emphasis on ideological considerations destroy our concerted quest for the creation of a final Caribbean Court of Appeal, our united search for an integrated system of legal education, or a common pursuit for effective schemes of legal aid, or for the protection of human rights. I do not think that the emergence of a deeper emphasis on ideological considerations need in itself destroy our joint enterprise.
Very smooth, sir, very smooth. One of the foremost legal luminaries of Barbados and of the region. And what I can tell you from my own interaction with him is that he is a true gentleman. Thank you, Sir Henry. Then there's Sir David Simmons himself, who I gather regarded Sir Grantley as an idol and a mentor. And after a spectacular career in the bar and in politics, Sir David became Chief Justice of this great nation. And I think by common consensus, Sir David was and remains one of the greatest Chief Justices Barbados has ever had. And last but not least, Sir Richard Cheltenham. The subtitle to his title in the book is Advocate Extraordinaire. He came to us in 1941 and is still very much present with us, and we are thankful for that. Sir Richard is quintessentially the legendary legal practitioner that we are looking for. Flamboyant, great flair, skill, passion. And I think that if we wanted to point to any great legal advocate that we wanted our young lawyers to emulate, we can look no further than Sir Richard. Thank you, Sir Richard. So it is the great pleasure of the CCJ Academy for Law to present these three outstanding jurists with a very small memento of our appreciation for their service and for their contribution to our legal profession.
As part of the project, a brief profile of each honoree was written by specially selected essayists. These profiles are compiled in the legendary Caribbean Legal Practitioners publication to memorialize the contribution of these outstanding jurists in the development of law in the Caribbean region. During the ceremony, Sir Richard, Sir Henry, and Sir David were presented with copies of the book and received a commemorative pin from the CCJ. Following the presentations, Sir Richard Cheltenham, retired parliamentarian and chairman of the Parliamentary Reform Commission, reflected on his illustrious career.
I am happy and honored to be in the company of Sir Henry and Sir David receiving this award. I was reminded that we three are contemporaries, having served in Parliament together in the same administrations, and in others too. They were always dedicated and highly competent at the bar, as well as in their public offices. In many areas of the law, from crime to public law, Sir David's judgment in his tour of duty as Chief Justice is considered the locus classicus in Barbados and are widely referred to, very helpful to modern-day practitioners, those who have followed him. As for Sir Henry, as Attorney General, he updated the laws of Barbados at such a pace that one day in Parliament I was forced to cry out that we were all suffering from legislative indigestion. We simply could not keep up. So let me begin by warmly congratulating them on this deserved award. I'm also thrilled to be included in the ranks of Sir Grantley Adams, Sir Hugh Woodin, Norman Manley, Sir Fenton Ramsay, Sir Jack Dare, Sir Harold St. John, all of whom I knew. I was close to Sir Jack and Sir Harold, who were my chamber masters, and I learnt much from them. There, along with my friend and mentor, Sir Fenton Ramsay, prominent Guyanese senior counsel, who had a long connection to Barbados. He actually owned the house and still does. It's still in his name, even though he has departed a few years ago. But they helped to shape the lawyer I became. You could not want for finer examples. Each of them spent time with me, and we worked closely together, especially Sir Fenton and I. Whenever I had a problem with no obvious solution, I would discuss it with him, and I would leave enlightened and gratified, ready to put my back to the plough, as it were. Bree and Jack taught me in particular the importance of fearlessness as a counsel, especially in the face of Chief Justice Douglas, who was constantly testing the metal of which you were made. Was it tin? Was it copper? Or was it iron? My indebtedness to Sir Jack and Sir Harold and Sir Fenton is enduring, and my only regret is that they are not here with us today. My earliest ambition was to be a lawyer and politician. While at the Foundation Boys School, my headmaster, Lee Harford Skeet, BCL, seemed to have been a frustrated magistrate. And many days he would be having trials on students that were sent before him by masters and others. And so my first appearance before the magistrate, as it were, was before Lee Harford Skeet. And I had many victories, as it were, before him, but on a few occasions I lost and got a flogging. When I left school, I was briefly working at the Waterworks Department, which at that time was just east of the registry. Perhaps some of you, or many of you, are too young to know the layout of the land around the court. And I would come in early, volunteer to do that, to get to work at 7 o'clock, 7 a.m., and I answered all the calls relating to burst pipes, so that when the staff came in, I would tell them that we have 5 burst mains across the country and so on. And by about 10 o'clock, I would slip over to the court. And I saw Bennett Niles, Jack Dare, Earl Barra, Will Hanschel, Theodore Branker, and many others. Some of them were in prominent cases that were reported both widely in the newspapers at the time and also in the West Indian reports. In 1962, I left for Mona and entered the BSc Faculty in Social Sciences and Economics. I pursued a degree in that. In those days, there was no law degree being offered by the University of the West Indies. In fact, this is before there was even the law school here in Barbados. But I always knew that if I set foot in England, I would be a lawyer. I would not leave before I became a lawyer, and I took a circuitous route in getting there, because after Mona, I went to McGill in Montreal, and then I went to Manchester University in England. But by the time I arrived at Heathrow, I took an oath to myself and 1 or 2 others in my hearing that I would not be leaving England until I have succeeded in my PhD, which I had got there to do, and also be a barrister at law. Some thought I was mad, and others thought other things about me. But I was able to complete both my PhD at Manchester and my barrister at law examination within 3 years. And so I fulfilled the pledge I had made to myself when I landed at Heathrow. My parents, Cloris Eugene and Lionel Keith, were both present at my call in Barbados in 1970. I would not be here today receiving this award without their love, their guidance, and support. My mother in particular was perhaps the biggest influence in my life. She would have been 104 a few weeks ago had she lived. She encouraged me to dream big and to follow the footsteps of giants like Norman Manley and Grantley Adams, whose example I was determined to emulate. And she had confidence in my ability to realize those dreams. But I have been lucky in my family, and I want to take the opportunity to thank my wife, Colleen, Lady Cheltenham, who's here, for her love, loyalty, support, and encouragement over the years. The saying is that behind every great man there's an even greater woman. In my case, there were two, my mother and my wife. This award has forced me to reflect on my legal career. I simultaneously forged a career in both law and politics and greatly enjoyed both. To me, they are both about serving people and helping people. And though I have had the benefit of working for many well-to-do and big clients, it was my extraordinary privilege to work for the average man. I felt tremendous satisfaction in my criminal law practice and my personal injury practice in particular. Those cases meant the world to those clients, and it was my pleasure to help them even when they could not pay. My office reminds me that that is still the case. I work for you whether you can pay or not. I deliberately cultivated a general practice and enjoyed it too. I did not feel that with effort, any area of the law was beyond me, though in some cases that meant knowing when to call in experts. Skills I learned before the jury, such as cross-examination and addressing the court, were easily transferable to civil litigation. I was blessed to have had a regional practice. The range of issues I came across in the Eastern Caribbean and as far north as Bermuda, Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, all exciting, and the quality of judging was high. I was fortunate, too, to have been exposed to commissions of inquiry work, starting off in Antigua, and over the years it led me to be brief in complex and rewarding matters, and to enjoy the goodwill of many people in the Eastern Caribbean, and later in Trinidad and Guyana. I wish to conclude, I've spoken far too long, by thanking the Caribbean Court of Justice for honoring me. Over the years, I had the pleasure of beforeing some of the justices there, first in the judicial office in the Eastern Caribbean, and then later on at the CCJ itself. This reward is a reminder that hard work and dedication truly pays off. But for those whose passion has been the law, it was always an enjoyable adventure, and it has given me tremendous pride and satisfaction. I commend the court for this initiative. It is an important part of reinforcing standards which have started to slip. None of the honorees would be where we are now without hard work, consistency, integritous conduct, and high aim. I only hope that young lawyers and law students will find the biographies contained in the book inspiring to them as the accounts of Adams and Miley, his legal exploits were to me as a young man. I can say to the court, I'm very much obliged.
Sir David Simmons has also enjoyed an outstanding career as an attorney at law and later senior counsel. Sir David served in the Parliament of Barbados for over 25 years, retiring from active politics in 2001. During his sojourn in politics, he served as Attorney General, first from 1985 to 1986, and more recently from September 1994 to August 2001. On many occasions during that latter period, Sir David also acted as Prime Minister of Barbados. Sir David Simmons then assumed office as the 12th Chief Justice of Barbados on January 1st, 2002. Today, Sir David Simmons chairs the Law Reform Commission as well as the Judicial Appointments Commission. For his contribution to public service and politics, he was awarded both the Barbados Centennial Honor and the Knight of St. Andrew in 2001, and now the CCJ's legendary Caribbean Legal Practitioner Award. Interestingly enough, and as previously mentioned, Sir David revered his mentor and fellow honoree, the late Sir Grantley Adams, whom he shares his April 28th birth date. In delivering remarks during the ceremony, Sir David likened his successful career to the teachings of the late Sir Grantley and Sir Henry Ford.
Let me begin, however, by thanking the Academy for Law of the CCJ, and in particular, the editors, Justice Anderson and Justice Dennis Barrow, for their leadership in ensuring that 48 persons from the Caribbean who had practiced law or may still be practicing law have been duly recognized for the contributions which they made over time. In fact, you said something in your remarks, Justice Anderson, that Sir Grantley was my mentor. And for more than one reason. I knew him closely because he used to pass through London every spring while I was there, on his way to serving on the Committee of Experts of the International Labour Organization. And I tell the story in one of the episodes on my life done by CBC. So David Simmons, his Life in Focus, I think it's called. They're there on YouTube. That I used to see him at the Charing Cross Hotel where he stayed on every visit. He introduced me to a thing called lager and lime, a beer with a touch of Clayton's lime cordial. But the next day, it was my duty to get a taxi and take the two of us to Charing Cross Road to a socialist bookshop known as Collett's. I think it's C-O-L-L-E-T-T'-S. And we spent at least an hour and a half there every year perusing and scouring the books on sale, looking for Fabian pamphlets or some eminent work that was rooted in socialism. And so my political consciousness was formed and developed from that interaction with Sir Grantley. But of course, as you probably all know, and I'm sure you will see in the book, he and I share a birth date. This month, yes, the 28th of April was his birthday and is mine. Fortuitously, it is known as National Heroes Day. I don't claim to be one, but he is one. But it is very touching to have been associated in this publication with Sir Grantley, Bree, St. John, Sir Henry, Jack Deere, and Sir Richard. Now, I think I practice with and against all of them. And Sir Patterson mentioned a record that I had with Jack Deere, yes. I think we appeared 14 times against each other, and I won 13. But that is how the cookie crumbles. As lawyers, we do not make the facts. We find the facts, and we have to advance and represent the case of the client as best we can within the confines of the law. So those things happen. Johnny and I go back to the late 60s. I first met Johnny has he been called Johnny this morning? Well, I mean Sir Richard Cheltenham, also known as the Pope. But we met at the Inns of Court School of Law on High Holborn in the late 60s, when we were both going to do the bar finals, and it was important that we attended lectures put on, sponsored by the council. And among our lecturers, Johnny, you will recall, were the late, of course, Sir Robert McGarry of McGarry and Wade, fantastic lecturer. And the most humorous lecturer that I've ever come across, you would have come across him in reading the pages of Cheshire and Fifer. Cecil Fifer taught us the general paper in those days. Very, very fascinating lecture. And then, of course, we came back to Barbados, and Johnny and I appeared together in criminal matters, appeared against each other in civil and criminal matters, but also had our time together in Parliament representing the interests of Barbadians, and particularly the poor. You know, you can be asked, what's the difference between practicing law and being a practicing politician? And for me, the stark difference is the number of persons whose lives you can affect for the better by being involved in politics. Whereas in the ordinary case, there's plaintiff against defendant or claimant against defendant, as is now called. So there's a small and narrow group of persons that you are representing their particular interests. On the other hand, if you bring a piece of legislation, for example, I don't know, Rehabilitation of Offenders Act or something like that, there's so many persons who that one bit of legislation can affect in a positive way. And that was the satisfaction I particularly got from being an MP. And being an MP owes a lot to my next honoree and my friend now for over 50 years, Sir Henry de Boulay Ford. I have gone public in saying that much of what I know about the practice of law, I learned from Sir Henry. It all began in 1970 Henry. There was a case that is written about in the book, I believe. Certainly, I think Tajmul Hussein's son writes about it. There was a group of Caribbean persons who alleged that they had an enforceable contract for the purchase of one of the islands in the Grenadines called Mayreau, M-A-Y-R-E-A-U, owned by the Eustace family of St. Vincent. And in those days, much of the heavy litigation in St. Vincent found Barbadian lawyers as representatives of the people of St. Vincent who were involved in the litigants who were involved in the particular cases. And this one we had for the Caribbean people. I'm not going to say who they were, except one was called Fuller from Antigua, but there were others. Nicholas Fuller. For Fuller, there was the great Tajmul Hussein of Trinidad, superb lawyer. And his junior was Othniel Sylvester from St. Vincent, and of course I think Emery Robertson. For one set of the Eustace family had Brie St. John, and for another set there was Sir Henry and myself. I was junior to Sir Henry. Henry, Brie, and I all stayed at a place called the Cobblestone Inn. And we had great times there after court was finished. But we were there for 2 weeks, taking the evidence. And then there was a break for a couple of weeks. We came back to Barbados. But before we left St. Vincent, the 1971 election was very much in the consciousness of Brie, Henry, and myself. I had just come back and been admitted, I think it was June 1970. So I said to them that I needed some time to determine whether I would get involved in politics at that early stage. And Brie was very insistent and very matter of fact. Some as you go run, you're running in St. Philip North. You go, I said, St. Philip North? Yeah, man, you still live up there. Now, St. Philip North for the Barbados Labour Party was like breaking rocks. Very, very hard. Anyhow, I ran. Green as grass, lost heavily to Neville Maxwell. And then I worked for the next 4 years closely with Henry and learned all the time when I appeared in court with him, something in every case I learned that was different and, an inspiration. Until I went to Dominica to do a case in 1975, and when I came back, Henry said to me, they had some fellows from St. Philip who wanted to see you. And I said, what was it about? He said, well, they want you to run again. I said, huh? This is in the election for 1976. I said, no. I said, yes, you must talk to them. So I talked to them. Among them were some who had campaigned strongly for the Democratic Labour Party and strongly against me in 1971, but as the saying goes in Barbados, they had turned and they were now supporting the Labour Party. So I talked to them and they worked with me. And of course, the rest, as they say, is history. I won the by-election in 1976 and then the general election in September 76. But always, Henry Ford was there giving me the benefit of his experience and the advice gleaned from being in Parliament in 1970, from 1971. Because in 1971, the Barbados Labour Party was waterline, lambasted, beaten 18-6. He was one of the survivors. And that was, he survived the, as it were, the Holocaust because of his temperament, personality, skills, and ability. And those were recognized by the constituents of Christchurch West. And he served that constituency until he retired. And I am so pleased that you could all be here today, because just last month, Sir Henry celebrated his 90th birthday. 91st? 91st, Sharon, that's right. I was never good at math. 91st. I think that is a fantastic milestone. But Henry had asked me to speak on his behalf this morning. And so I'm pleased to have made some comments about how helpful he has been to me, but how helpful he has been to the legal profession in Barbados. Henry Ford set standards and examples for all of us to follow. A man of the greatest integrity, the greatest intellectual skill, thoroughness and resourcefulness. These are qualities and attributes that should inhere in every lawyer, but unfortunately do not. And you have to work at the cultivation of these attributes. And I learned from Henry Ford how to work. He worked very hard. He taught me to work very hard. You cannot reach where he has reached or where we have reached today to be the recipients of these generous awards without a bedrock of hard work, dedication, and commitment to the thing, the discipline called the law. And you will read the rest about me and Henry in the book. I'm not going to go into it. But I wish to thank you all again for being here to share in this moment, which I shall treasure for the, I'm 85, but what am I saying? I'm 83, almost 84. I tell you, I was never good at maths. I'm trying to get another year. 84 next month. So I don't know how much longer. This month. This month. Yeah. That is not a senior moment, nor is it any evidence of incipient Alzheimer's. It's just that I'm so delighted and honored by your presence and the warmth of your welcome that I forgot the dates. Thank you ever so much. And Justice Anderson, please convey my regards to your colleagues at the CCJ.
We wish Sir David a happy birthday. We acknowledge his work and that of Sir Richard and Sir Henry. The legacy of these stalwarts have made a profound impact on the lives of Barbadians. Irrespective of the field of work, let us be inspired to work in such a manner that we leave this island better than how we found it. It is hoped that highlighting the lives and work of these legal luminaries will inspire younger generations of practitioners. This has been a National Heroes Day edition of Info Insight, a presentation of Barbados' legendary Caribbean legal practitioners. I'm Joshua Hinkson. Thanks for your time.